The first time Emily Carter served Richard Sterling breakfast, their hands brushed by accident, and in that fleeting second, they both witnessed something impossible. A battlefield from 1225, a dying slave in the arms of a queen, and a promise that echoed across 800 years. But to truly understand what happened that Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. in the Sterling mansion, you first need to know who Richard Sterling was. 42 years old, CEO of Sterling Resorts, a chain of 12 luxury hotels that raked in $280 million annually. A widower for 3 years, ever since his wife, Michelle, died in a car accident he was driving. Since then, Richard Sterling had transformed into a machine. He worked 16 hours a day, slept 4, and spent the remaining 4 in the gym of his sprawling mansion, a 26,000 square foot testament to his success, relentlessly pounding a punching bag until his knuckles bled. The mansion's staff called him the Ghost because Richard didn't speak to anyone. He didn't look at anyone. He only barked orders in a glacial tone, then vanished into his third-floor office. In 3 years, he'd fired 47 employees, not for incompetence, but because their mere presence reminded him that he was still alive, while Michelle was dead. And then Emily arrived, 28 years old, a kitchen employee, hired on September 15th to replace the previous cook, who'd quit after just 2 weeks. Emily Carter was slender, almost fragile. She bore dark circles under her eyes, the mark of someone deprived of sleep for months. And when the butler, Mr. Abernathy, showed her the industrial-grade kitchen, she asked only one thing: when can I start working overtime? Because Emily had a daughter, Sophia, 4 years old, diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia 7 months prior. The treatment cost $12,000 a month. Emily earned $2,000. She worked at the Sterling mansion from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Then she raced to the Pearl restaurant, where she washed dishes from 3 to 10 at night. And at 11 p.m., she cleaned offices in the Cervantes building until 4 in the morning. She slept 1 hour and repeated the cycle. A widow for a year. Her husband, Danny, had died in a construction accident. No insurance, nothing, only debts. And Emily, with a 3-year-old baby newly diagnosed with cancer, had to choose, sink or fight. She chose to fight. But what Emily didn't know was that on Tuesday, September 17th at 7 a.m., when she served Richard Sterling coffee for the first time, 800 years of history were about to explode in a single second. If you've ever felt like you know someone you've just met, leave me a comment, because what you're about to hear will change the way you understand human connections. Richard Sterling descended the marble staircase at 7 o'clock sharp. As always, Armani grey suit. As always, face like stone. As always, Mr. Abernathy had informed him about the new cook, but Richard hadn't paid attention. Employees were interchangeable parts, numbers on a payroll, nothing more. He sat at the head of the dining room table, a mahogany expanse designed for 24 people. He always sat alone. He opened his laptop, checked emails, and waited for his breakfast. Emily pushed open the kitchen door, carrying a silver tray, black coffee, toast, fruit, orange juice. She'd prepared everything exactly as Mr. Abernathy had instructed. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She'd slept 47 minutes that night, but she needed this job. She needed every penny. She walked toward the table. Richard didn't even look up. Emily placed the coffee cup in front of him. And at that moment, as she withdrew her hand, her fingers brushed against Richard's. It was a touch lasting less than a second, but both felt as if 800 years detonated within them. Richard looked up, and he saw, not with his eyes, but with something deeper, a battlefield, bodies everywhere, smoke, screams, and a man in broken armor, covered in blood, falling to his knees. and a woman in a royal blue gown running toward him, screaming, and the man whispering, "In every life, my queen, I will find you." Emily dropped the tray. The clang of metal against the floor startled Richard. The vision vanished, but the tremor remained, like electricity coursing through his veins. They stared at each other. Richard's eyes, grey as steel, locked onto Emily's, deep brown. And for the first time in 3 years, Richard Sterling felt something other than pain, recognition, as if he had been waiting 800 years for that moment. Emily stepped back. Her heart pounded at 180 beats per minute. What was that? What had she just seen? A dying man, a promise, blood, roses. It made no sense. "I'm so sorry, sir," Emily whispered, bending to pick up the tray. Richard didn't respond. His right hand trembled. He clenched his fist, squeezing until his knuckles turned white. It was just exhaustion, lack of sleep. He'd worked until 3 a.m. That's all it was. It had to be. "You're dismissed," Richard said. His voice controlled, but his hand continued to tremble. Emily picked up the tray, turned, and hurried back to the kitchen. She closed the door behind her, leaned against the wall, and felt tears streaming down her face, without understanding why. What was that? At the table, Richard closed his laptop. He looked at his right hand. The trembling had stopped, but something else had begun. A sensation in his chest, as if a clock that had been frozen for 800 years had just started ticking again. He stood up, went up to his office, closed the door, and for the first time in 3 years, Richard Sterling didn't work. He simply sat in his leather chair, staring out the window, wondering why he felt like he had just found something he had lost long, long ago. The next 5 days were strange. Richard came down for breakfast at 7 a.m. Emily served him coffee, but now both were careful not to touch. Emily placed the cup 4 inches from Richard's hand. He waited until she moved away before taking it, as if both knew that another touch could trigger something neither was ready to face. But there was something more. Emily knew the mansion. Mr. Abernathy noticed it on the 3rd day. Emily was cleaning the 2nd-floor library when the butler entered to show her where the cleaning supplies were, but Emily had already found them. In the hidden cabinet behind the false wood panel, a cabinet that didn't appear in the house manual, a cabinet that only employees with more than 5 years of service knew about. "How did you know that was there?" Mr. Abernathy asked. Emily blinked, looked at the wood panel. I don't know, I just felt it should be there." That same afternoon, Emily was preparing dinner when Mr. Abernathy asked her if she knew where the spice pantry was. Emily walked straight to the 3rd cabinet on the left, opened the false door, and took out the saffron that Mr. Abernathy needed. The secret pantry had been built 40 years ago by Richard's grandfather. Only the Sterling family knew of its existence. "Emily," said Mr. Abernathy with a serious voice, "you've been in this house before." Emily shook her head. "No, it's my first time." But as she said it, an image flashed in her mind. A rose garden, marble columns, and a lion-shaped fountain. She had seen that garden. But how? The Sterling mansion had no rose garden, only lawn and a swimming pool. Richard, too, began to notice things. Saturday night, he was working in his office when he heard music. Soft, distant. A melody he didn't recognize, but that made his skin crawl. He went downstairs, following the sound. It was coming from the kitchen. He opened the door silently. Emily was cleaning the countertops, humming an ancient melody. No lyrics, just notes. Melancholy, beautiful, like something sung in a medieval cathedral. Richard felt something break in his chest. He knew that melody. He didn't know from where or how, but he knew it. As if he had heard it 800 years ago in a rose garden, while a slave died in a queen's arms, Emily sensed his presence. She stopped humming, turned around, "Sorry, sir," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to bother you." "That song," said Richard. His voice sounded strange, broken. "Where did you learn it?" Emily frowned. I don't know. I've been humming it since I was a little girl. My grandmother said I used to sing it when I was a baby. But nobody knows where it comes from." Silence. Richard took a step toward her. Emily felt the shiver again, like electricity, like recognition, as if every cell in her body screamed, "You know him. You've always known him." "I need you to leave," said Richard. But his voice didn't sound angry. It sounded scared. Emily nodded, took her purse, and left the kitchen without looking back. But at the door, she stopped. "Mr. Sterling," she said without turning around. "Do you ever feel like you know someone you've just met?" Richard didn't answer. Emily left, and Richard stood in the empty kitchen with the echo of an 800-year-old melody resonating in his head. Sunday morning. Richard couldn't sleep. At 4 a.m., he went down to the library, lit the fireplace, and started searching through the Sterling family archives. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he felt there was something, some connection, some answer. He found a wooden box on the third shelf, covered in dust. He opened it. Inside were ancient documents, letters, photos of great-grandparents, and an object wrapped in white cloth. He unwrapped it, a ring of gold, ancient, with an inscription engraved on the inside, I+A until eternity. Richard felt the floor disappear beneath his feet. He knew that ring. He didn't know how, or from where, but he knew it. As if he had seen it 800 years ago, on the finger of a queen who swore to wait for him in every life. He put the ring in the pocket of his robe, went up to his room, sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time since Michelle died, Richard Sterling cried, not from sadness, but from something deeper, from recognition, from loss, from a promise he had forgotten, but that his soul remembered. Monday, at 7 a.m., Emily arrived at the mansion. She had deeper dark circles under her eyes. She had worked a triple shift on Sunday because the hospital had called her. Sophia needed an urgent transfusion, $3,000. Emily had $800. She had cried in the hospital bathroom for 20 minutes. Then she washed her face, went back to work, and decided she would ask Mr. Sterling for an advance. She prepared breakfast, coffee, toast, fruit. She left the kitchen with the tray. Richard was already seated, as always. Grey suit, as always. But there was something different in his eyes. Emily placed the coffee cup. This time she wasn't careful. Her fingers touched Richard's, and the world exploded again. But this time the vision was clearer, longer. Emily saw a palace, marble columns, a rose garden, and a woman in a royal blue dress standing next to a lion-shaped fountain. The woman turned, and her eyes were Emily's. Same brown eyes, same face shape, but with a gold crown. And in front of her, kneeling, a man with chains on his wrists, head bowed, but when he looked up, Emily saw Richard's grey eyes. The vision ended. Emily pulled her hand away as if she had been burned. Gasping, Richard had stood up, pale, trembling. "You saw it too," said Richard. It wasn't a question. Emily nodded, unable to speak. "Who are you?" Richard whispered. "I don't know," Emily replied, "but I feel like I know you. I feel like I've always known you." Silence. And then Richard did something he had never done with any employee in 15 years. He extended his right hand. Emily looked at it, trembling, and slowly placed her hand in his. This time there was no vision, only a sense of completeness, as if two pieces of an 800-year-old puzzle had finally fit together. Richard looked at Emily's hand and saw something that made him freeze. On Emily's right pulse, there was a birthmark, dark, in the shape of a horizontal line, like an ancient scar. Richard let go of her hand, rolled up his shirt sleeve, and showed his right pulse. Same mark, Same place, same shape, as if 800 years ago, someone had had chains on that pulse, and the mark had crossed lives. Emily backed away. Her back hit the wall. This isn't possible. This can't be real. Richard approached, but not threateningly, pleadingly, as if he needed answers as much as she did. "The mansion you're working in," said Richard with a broken voice, "was built in 1890 on the ruins of an ancient Spanish palace from the 13th century. My great-grandfather bought the land because, according to the legends, there had been a royal palace here. The rose garden they destroyed to build the pool was 800 years old, and the lion-shaped fountain they moved to the National Museum had been in the center of that garden since 1225. Emily felt her legs give way. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. "I've seen that garden," she whispered, "in my dreams, since I was a little girl. A rose garden, a lion fountain, and a man dying. Always the same dream, always the same man." Richard knelt in front of her. For the first time in 3 years, his grey eyes weren't empty. They were full of tears. "Me too," he said. "I've dreamed of a woman in a blue dress, crying over my body, telling me she would wait for me. 800 years. They looked at each other, and in that moment, without a word, they both knew the truth. This wasn't the first time they had met, and what was about to happen next would prove that some promises are so powerful that even death can't break them. If this story is giving you chills, imagine how they felt. And what they discovered afterward was even more impossible. But first, Richard tried to deny everything. He got up from the floor, helped Emily to her feet, and in a cold, almost robotic voice, he said, "It's just stress. We're both tired. Coincidences happen. Nothing more." Emily looked at him and knew he was lying, because his hands were trembling, and his grey eyes were filled with something that wasn't coldness. It was fear. Fear that it was real. Fear that it wasn't. Fear of losing again, something he had just found. "I need you to keep working," Richard said, as if nothing had happened. "Your shift ends at 2. You can leave after that." Emily nodded, took the tray, and returned to the kitchen, her legs shaking. But what neither of them knew is that denying a connection of 800 years is like trying to stop a tsunami with your bare hands. Impossible. That night, Richard locked himself in his office, drank whiskey, reviewed contracts, answered emails, tried to work, but at 2 in the morning, he gave up. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same thing. A rose garden, 1225, full moon, and him, in broken armor, blood covering his chest, falling into the arms of a woman in a blue dress, and whispering, "In every life, my queen, I will find you." He woke up screaming, sweating, his heart racing at 200 beats per minute, and he knew it wasn't a dream. It was a memory. Emily couldn't sleep either. She arrived at her apartment at 11 at night after her 3rd job. Michelle was asleep in the arms of the neighbor, Mrs. Davis, who took care of her for free because Emily couldn't afford a babysitter. Emily thanked her, carried Michelle inside, laid her down in the bed they shared, and sat on the edge, watching her daughter breathe, and she cried because it was all too much. The cancer, the 3 jobs, the exhaustion, and now this, visions, recognition. A millionaire who looked at her as if he'd known her for 800 years. She was going crazy. She had to be. But then she closed her eyes and saw. She wasn't Emily. She was Isabella, Queen of Castile, 22 years old, standing in a rose garden, and in front of her, kneeling with chains on his wrists, a Germanic slave with grey eyes who had just saved her life during the invasion. And she, breaking all the rules of society, knelt beside him, took his face in her hands, and whispered, "In every life, I will wait for you." Emily opened her eyes, gasping. It wasn't a dream. It was a memory. The next few days were torture. Richard and Emily avoided each other. He came down for breakfast at 6 instead of 7. She prepared everything and left before he arrived. They didn't look at each other. They didn't speak, but they both felt the connection, like an invisible electrical cable, vibrating between them. Mr. Abernathy noticed it. The butler had worked for the Sterling family for 30 years, and he had never seen Richard Sterling behave like this, distracted, nervous, human. "Mr. Sterling," said Mr. Abernathy on Thursday afternoon, "is everything all right with Emily?" Richard looked up from his laptop. "Why do you ask?" "Because you avoid her, and she avoids you. And when you're in the same room, it's as if the air becomes electric." Richard closed the laptop, slowly, and in a controlled voice said, "That's none of your business, Abernathy." The butler nodded, but before leaving, he stopped at the door. "Mr. Sterling, my grandmother used to say that some souls are destined to meet, and that when they do, the universe conspires to bring them together, no matter how many lives it takes." Richard didn't respond, but that night, he called his best friend, Dr. David Chen, a historian specializing in medieval Spain. They had known each other since college, and if anyone could give him answers, it was him. They met at a discreet bar at 10 at night. "I need you to investigate something," Richard said without greetings. "I want to know if in 1225 there was a Queen Isabella of Castile, and if she had any connection with a slave." David frowned. "Why?" Richard drank his whiskey in one gulp. "Because I'm going crazy." And he told him everything. The visions, the identical birthmarks, Emily knowing the mansion without ever having been there, the ancient melody, the dreams. David listened in silence, and when Richard finished, the historian sighed. "Richard, I'm a scientist. I don't believe in reincarnation." "Neither do I," said Richard. "But something is happening, and I need to know if it has historical basis, or if I'm losing my mind." David nodded. "Give me a week." Emily also sought answers. On Friday night, after her shift at the diner, she went to the public library. She searched for books on medieval Spain, Kingdom of Castile, year 1225, and she found something that made her freeze. A history book, page 247, title, "The Forbidden Loves of Spanish Royalty." And there, in small print, she read, "It is rumored that Queen Isabella of Castile, who ruled briefly between 1223 and 1228, had a secret love with a Germanic slave named Alaric. According to the chronicles, Alaric died defending her during the invasion of 1225. The queen never married. She died 3 years later, some say of sadness. The royal palace was destroyed in 1650. Its ruins exist under what is now an exclusive residential area on the outskirts of Madrid." Emily read the paragraph 5 times. Then she searched for the location of the old palace on Google Maps and felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. The exact coordinates match the address of the Sterling mansion. What you would do if you discovered that you knew someone from a past life. Comment, because what Emily did next changed everything. On Saturday morning, Emily arrived at the mansion at 6 a.m., but instead of going to the kitchen, she went up to the 3rd floor. Mr. Abernathy had mentioned that there was an attic full of old things from the Sterling family, things that no one had touched in decades. She needed to see. She needed to know. She opened the attic door, dust everywhere, wooden boxes, furniture covered with white cloths, smell of history. And then she felt it, a pull, as if something was calling her, guiding her. She walked to the back of the attic. There was a small box made of rusted metal with a broken lock. She opened it, and inside, wrapped in faded red cloth, she found a ring made of gold, ancient, with worn engravings. She took it out. Her hands were trembling. She turned it over and saw the inscription on the inside, I plus A to eternity. Emily felt like she couldn't breathe. because she knew with every fiber of her being that this ring was hers, that she had worn it 800 years ago, that she had given it to a grey-eyed slave before he died in her arms. She placed it on her right ring finger. It fit perfectly, and in that moment, the world vanished, a vision, complete. Not fragments, the entire story. 1225, Castile Palace. She is Isabella, 22 years old, queen for 2 years after her father's death, and he is Alaric, 32 years old, a Germanic slave, a prisoner of war since he was 18. He served in the palace for 14 years, and against all the rules, against all logic, they fall in love. She sees him every day in the rose garden. He tends the flowers, she comes down for a walk, and they talk in secret. Because a queen cannot love a slave, but love doesn't understand class, and one night, under the full moon, she gives him a ring of gold with the inscription I+A until eternity, and he vows to protect her, always. 3 months later, the kingdom of Leon invades. They attack the palace. Alaric, though a slave, breaks his chains, takes a sword from a fallen soldier, and stands between the invaders and the queen. He takes 7 spear thrusts, but manages to help her escape. And as he dies in the rose garden at 11:47 p.m., with the full moon above them, he whispers, "In every life, my queen, I will find you." And she, weeping over his body, responds, "And I will wait for you, even if I have to search for you 1,000 years. The vision ended. Emily fell to her knees in the attic, crying, the ring clutched in her fist, because now she knew the truth. Richard Sterling was not a stranger. He was Alaric, the man who had died for her 800 years ago, the man who had vowed to find her in every life, and he had. And what she didn't know was that at that very moment, downstairs, Richard had just received a call from Dr. Ethan Riley, and the news was about to confirm the impossible. "Richard," Ethan said over the phone. His voice sounded strange. "I need you to come to the National Museum, now." "It's 6 a.m., Ethan." "I know, but I found something, and you need to see it in person." Richard hung up, got dressed, and drove to the museum in 20 minutes. Ethan was waiting at the entrance, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept. They entered a restricted room in the historical archive. Ethan closed the door, placed a box on the table, and looked at Richard with an expression that mixed awe and fear. "I spent all night investigating," Ethan said. "And Richard, what I found should not be possible." He opened the box. Inside were ancient documents, parchments, and a photograph of a portrait. "This portrait," Ethan said, "is in the museum's private gallery. It dates back to 1225. It was found in the ruins of Castile Palace in 1890, and it depicts Queen Isabella of Castile next to her personal guardian." He handed the photo to Richard, and Richard felt the world stop. In the portrait, painted 800 years ago, was a young woman in a royal blue dress, a golden crown, standing in a rose garden, and next to her, kneeling, with chains on his wrists, a man. The woman's face was identical to Emily Carter's. The man's face was identical to Richard Sterling's. Same eyes, same facial structure, as if the artist from 1225 had painted a photograph of them. Richard dropped the photo, stepped back, his breathing quickening. Ethan continued, "And there's more. I found chronicles from the Kingdom of Castile, year 1225. They speak of an invasion by the Kingdom of Leon, and of a Germanic slave named Alaric, who broke his chains to defend the queen. He took 7 spear thrusts, died in the palace garden. Exact documented time, 11:47 p.m. Date, August 15th, 1225. Richard sat down, trembling. Queen Isabella, Ethan continued, survived, but never married. She died 3 years later, officially of fever. But the chroniclers wrote that she died of sadness. And here's the part that's going to break you. Ethan handed him another document, translated from medieval Latin. It was a letter written by Queen Isabella, dated August 10th, 1228. 3 days before her death, Richard read, and tears began to fall. The letter said, "If there is life after this life, I will seek him out, no matter how long it takes. 100 years, 500, 1,000. My soul will recognize his. And even if we have to be born in different worlds, even if he is a king and I am a slave, my heart will find him, because some promises do not end with death. Alaric vowed to find me in every life, and I vow to wait for him until eternity." Richard closed his eyes and saw everything, not fragmented visions, complete memory. He was Alaric, Emily was Isabella, and 800 years later, they had both kept their promise. If this story hasn't given you chills, let me tell you that what happened next was even more impossible. Some stories should not be real, but they are. Richard left the museum at 8 a.m., drove straight to the mansion. He had to talk to Emily. He had to show her the photo of the portrait, the chronicles, the letter, but Emily was not there. Mr. Abernathy informed him that Emily had called at 7 a.m. She wouldn't be coming to work. Family emergency. Richard felt panic. "Where is she?" The butler hesitated, then sighed. "Mr. Sterling, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Emily has a daughter, 4 years old, with leukemia. She's hospitalized at St. Raphael's Hospital. Emily works 3 shifts to pay for the treatment." Richard felt something break in his chest. "Why didn't she tell me?" "Because you never asked," Mr. Abernathy replied softly. Richard grabbed his car keys. "What room?" 407, 4th floor. Richard drove to St. Raphael's Hospital at 90 miles per hour, parked poorly, ran to the 4th floor, found room 407, and what he saw shattered him. Sophia, a little girl, 4 years old, was in the hospital bed, pale, with tubes connected to her arms, asleep, and Emily was sitting in a chair next to the bed, head resting on the mattress, hand holding Sophia's. Asleep from sheer exhaustion, she had deep circles under her eyes, wrinkled clothes. She had been crying. It was evident in her stained cheeks. Richard entered silently, approached, and without thinking, placed his hand on Emily's shoulder to wake her gently. And in that second, the world exploded, a shared vision. They both saw it, at the same time, complete, vivid, as if they were there. 1225, August 15th. Night. Full moon. The Castile Palace is under attack. Screams. Fire. Soldiers from the Kingdom of Leon breaking down doors. Blood in the hallways. Alaric, a 32-year-old Germanic slave, is in the rose garden when he hears that the invaders are heading towards the Queen's chambers. Without thinking, he breaks the chains on his wrists. The steel, it bites into his skin. He bleeds, but he is free. He grabs a sword from a fallen soldier and races toward the royal tower. He finds 3 enemy soldiers, breaking down the door to Queen Isabella's chamber. He roars. He confronts them. He kills 2. The 3rd wounds him, a spear to his left shoulder. Alaric falls, but he rises. More soldiers arrive, 5 of them. He's 1 against 5. He takes a 2nd spear to the right thigh, a 3rd spear to the abdomen. But he won't fall, because if he falls, she dies. A 4th spear to the chest, a 5th to the back, a 6th to the left arm. Alaric drops to his knees. He spits blood, but he stands his ground between the soldiers and the door. Queen Isabella emerges. She sees Alaric covered in blood. She screams. She kneels beside him. The soldiers flee. The battle is lost for them. The kingdom's reinforcements arrive, but it's too late for Alaric. Isabella lifts him. She carries him to the rose garden. their favorite place, where they spoke in secret every night. She lays him down beneath the largest rosebush, a full moon above them. 11:40 p.m. Alaric is dying. A seventh spear has pierced his lung. He's bleeding from the mouth. Isabella weeps. She cradles his head in her lap. She caresses his face. "Don't leave me," she whispers. Alaric smiles, weakly. "In every life, my queen, I will find you." Isabella removes the ring from her finger, the ring she gave Alaric 3 months ago. She places it in his hand. "And I will wait for you," she says through sobs, "even if I have to search for you for 1,000 years. Alaric takes his last breath. 11:47 p.m. Isabella screams. She cries over his body, and she vows, before the moon, before the roses, before God and the universe, that she will find him, no matter how long it takes. The vision ends. Richard and Emily open their eyes at the same time. In room 407 of St. Raphael's Hospital in 2025, 800 years later, they are both crying. They look at each other, and without words, they know it's real. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't imagination. It was them, 800 years ago, loving, losing, promising, and finding each other again. Emily gets up, trembling, Richard too. They stare at each other just 1.5 feet apart, and Richard drops to his knees like Alaric, like 800 years ago. Only now, he isn't dying. He's alive, and so is she. "I found you," Richard whispers, his voice breaking. "I searched for you in every life, and I found you." Emily drops to her knees in front of him. She cups his face in her hands, exactly as Isabella did in 1225. "And I waited for you," she replies through tears. 800 years, and I would do it again." They embrace, and they cry, because after 800 years, two souls are finally together, again, in the bed. Sophia opens her eyes. She sees her mother crying with a stranger, and in a small voice, she asks, "Mommy, are you okay?" Emily pulls away from Richard. She wipes her tears. She goes to her daughter. "I'm okay, my love, better than ever." Richard gets up. He sees Sophia, the 4-year-old girl, pale, sick, struggling to live, and something awakens in him. It's not the first time he has seen this girl. In his visions, in his dreams, he had seen Isabella with a little girl in the palace, a girl that Isabella cared for as if she were her own. Sophia looks at him too, and without anyone saying anything, she smiles. "You're Mommy's dream man." Emily freezes. "What did you say, Sophia?" The girl points to Richard. "Mommy talks about him when she sleeps. She says she waited a long time for him." Richard feels his heart swell. He approaches the bed. He sits on the edge, and in a gentle voice, he says, "How are you feeling, Sophia?" "Tired," the girl replies, "but less so today, because Mommy is happy." Richard looks at Emily, and he makes a decision. "I'm going to pay for the entire treatment," he says. The best doctors. Anything she needs." Emily shakes her head. "No, I can't accept that. It's not charity," Richard says. "It's a debt from 800 years ago." Emily cries, but she insists. "I don't want you to pay because you feel like you have to." Richard takes her hand. He looks her in the eyes. "I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I love you. I have loved you for 800 years, and I am not going to lose you again. Not you, nor Sophia." Silence. Emily squeezes his hand, and finally, she nods. Richard calls Dr. Abernathy. He asks him for contacts with the best oncologists in the country. In 3 hours, Sophia has a medical board with 4 specialists. In 6 hours, she has a new treatment plan, experimental, expensive, but with an 80% success rate. Richard pays for everything, without hesitating. That night, Emily falls asleep at the hospital. Richard too, sitting side by side in uncomfortable chairs, hands intertwined, and for the first time in 800 years, both sleep without nightmares. 3 days later, Richard organizes something special. He invites Emily to the mansion, not as an employee, as a guest. Mr. Abernathy prepares a formal dinner, table for two, candles, roses. But Richard has something else planned. He takes Emily to the main hall. There's an antique harp, decorative. It has been there for 40 years. No one touches it. "I want to show you something," Richard says. He approaches the harp, but he doesn't touch it. He looks at Emily. In the vision we shared, Isabella played music for Alaric every night in the rose garden. Emily nods. "I remember." Richard smiles. "I think you still know how?" Emily shakes her head. "I've never played a harp in my life." "Try." Richard insists. Emily approaches. She touches the strings with trembling fingers, and the impossible happens. Her hands move on their own, as if they remember, as if they had done this 1,000 times. And she begins to play, an ancient melody, medieval, beautiful, melancholy. The same melody she was humming in the kitchen weeks ago. The melody that Isabella played for Alaric 800 years ago in the rose garden of the palace. Emily plays for 5 minutes, eyes closed, tears falling. Her hands remember every note, every pause, as if her soul had kept the music for 8 centuries. When she finishes, she opens her eyes. Richard is on his knees, crying. "That song," he whispers. "I heard it every night. While dying, while living, it was ours." Emily leaves the harp. She runs to him. She kneels down, and they kiss. For the first time in 800 years, and it's like coming home. If this story didn't give you chills, you have no soul. Comment soulmate if you believe that true connections transcend time. The following months were transformative. Sophia responded to treatment, better than expected. In 3 months, her leukemia was in remission. The doctors called it a miracle. Richard called it destiny. Emily quit her 3 jobs. Richard insisted, not because he was keeping her, but because she needed to be with Sophia during the treatment, and because, honestly, he needed to be with her. They didn't live together, not yet. Things were going slowly, but they spent every day together. Breakfasts, dinners, weekends in the garden of the mansion. Richard had 800 roses planted, one for each year of waiting, and he installed a fountain shaped like a lion, identical to the one from the palace in 1225. Emily wept when she saw it. Dr. Alex Reed became a close friend to them both. He showed them all the chronicles, all the documents. And even though as a scientist he couldn't believe in reincarnation, he couldn't deny the evidence. One afternoon, Alex took them to the National Museum, to the private gallery. He showed them the original portrait from 1225. Emily and Richard stood before it, gazing at their own faces painted 800 years ago. Isabella in a blue dress, a gold crown, standing in a rose garden. Alaric on his knees, broken chains on the floor. Isabella's hand on his shoulder, and in the background, an inscription in Latin that Alex translated, "Amor vincit omnia et mortem." Love conquers all, even death. Richard took Emily's hand, and in front of the portrait of their past lives, he asked her a question. "Marry me." Emily turned. Surprised, Richard pulled a ring from his pocket. Gold, ancient, the same ring Emily had found in the attic. The ring from 1225, with the inscription I+A, until eternity. "Not because we are Alaric and Isabella," Richard said, "but because we are Richard and Emily, and I don't want to wait 800 more years to be with you." Emily cried and said yes. They were married 3 months later, a small ceremony, in the rose garden of the mansion, exactly where the palace of 1225 had stood. Sophia was the flower girl, completely recovered, her hair growing back, smiling. Dr. Alex officiated. Mr. Abernathy wept. And all 800 roses bloomed at the same time. As if the universe was celebrating, Richard and Emily exchanged vows. He said, "In this life and in all the lives to come, I will be yours." She responded, "I waited 800 years for you, and I would do it again, but now I don't have to wait anymore." They kissed, and two souls, separated by death in 1225, finally reunited in 2025. Promise fulfilled. But the story doesn't end there, because what they discovered next would prove that destiny has bigger plans than any of us can imagine. A year after the wedding, Richard and Emily were sitting in the rose garden. It was August 15th, exactly 801 years after Alaric died in Isabella's arms. Richard had organized something special, a dinner under the stars, exactly at 11:47 p.m., the hour Alaric had taken his last breath. But this time, there was no death, only life, love, and promises kept. Emily wore the ring from 1225 on her finger. Richard had an identical replica on his own, made with the same inscription, I+A until eternity. Sophia, now 5 years old, was playing among the roses, completely healthy. Her hair had grown long and dark. She laughed, ran, lived. The doctors had said it was a miracle. Richard knew it was something more, destiny, because Sophia wasn't just Emily's daughter. In the visions they had both shared, they had seen Isabella caring for a little girl in the palace of 1225, an orphaned girl Isabella had adopted as her own. Sophia was that girl, reincarnated, back with them, all three souls together again. After 800 years. "Richard," Emily said that night as they looked at the stars, "do you think there are other people like us?" Richard looked at her. "What do you mean?" "People who recognize each other, who feel connections they can't explain, who dream of lives they didn't live in this body, but that their soul remembers." Richard thought about it and nodded. "I think so. I think there are millions of people feeling the same thing, but they don't have proof. They don't have historical documents. They just have that feeling, and most ignore it, because society says it's impossible." Emily squeezed his hand. "Then we should help them." And that conversation changed everything. If there's anything to do after hearing a story like this, it's to share it, because somewhere, someone needs to know that inexplicable connections are real. Share this video, save a timeline. 6 months later, Richard and Emily founded the Connected Souls Foundation. It wasn't a traditional charity. It was a research center, documentation hub, and validation source. Their mission, to help people who experience inexplicable soul recognition find answers. Through historical research, DNA analysis, guided regression, and scientific documentation, Dr. Alex Reed became the director of research. They set up offices in an old house on the outskirts of Madrid, hired 3 historians, 2 geneticists, a psychologist specializing in memory, and opened their doors. In the first month, they received 47 applications, people from all over the world who had felt inexplicable connections, who dreamed of places they had never visited, who recognized the faces of people they had just met, who had birthmarks in places where they had been injured in past lives. Richard and Emily's story had gone viral. Alex had published a scientific article documenting their case, with photos of the 1225 portrait, the chronicles, the identical birthmarks, Isabella's letter. The article's title, Soul Recognition, a documented case of non-genetic transgenerational memory. It was rejected by 12 scientific journals. Too controversial, too impossible. But the 13th journal, the Journal of Consciousness Studies, published it, and it exploded. In 6 months, the article was cited 2,400 times. Scientists around the world began to investigate similar cases. Universities opened departments of consciousness studies. And the conversation shifted from does reincarnation exist to how do we document it scientifically? the Connected Souls Foundation began processing cases. Case 1. Mary Santos, 34 years old, from Mexico. Since childhood, she dreamed of drowning on a ship. At 28, she met a man in a coffee shop. She instantly felt panic and love at the same time. Historical investigation revealed ship Titanic, 1912, passenger named Mary Santos, died by drowning. Traveling with her fiancé James McAllister, passport photo from 1912, face identical to Mary's. The man from the coffee shop, direct descendant of James McAllister, case documented, filed as probable connection. Case 7. Chen Wei, 29 years old, from China. From age 5, he spoke phrases in German without ever having learned it. He had nightmares about concentration camps. Birthmark in the shape of a number on his forearm. Investigation. Auschwitz camp, 1944. German prisoner Hans Weiss. Identification number tattooed. Same pattern as Chen's birthmark. Archive photo, facial similarity, 87%. Documented case. Archived as confirmed transgenerational memory. Case 12. Amara Johnson. 26 years old, United States, lesbian. Since she was a teenager, she had dreamt of a woman in a Victorian dress. At 24, she visited a museum in London. She saw a portrait from 1850. It was the woman of her dreams. Investigation. Lady Elizabeth Hart, 1850, British aristocrat, had a secret romance with her lady's companion Sarah Thompson. Both died in a fire at Hart Mansion. Letters found documented their forbidden love. Amara has a birthmark resembling a burn on her back, the same location where Lady Elizabeth was burned, according to medical reports from 1850. Documented case. Archived as transgenerational romantic connection. In 2 years, the Foundation documented 89 cases. Not all were reincarnation. Some were genetic memory, others statistical coincidence. But 23 cases were classified as highly probable connection. 23 people who found answers. 23 souls who stopped feeling crazy. Richard and Emily did not charge for the service. Everything was free, financed by Richard's fortune, but more importantly, financed by purpose, because they had lived years without answers, feeling like they were insane. And now they could give others what they had desperately sought: validation. But the biggest impact wasn't in the documented cases. It was in the thousands of people who read the stories and finally gave themselves permission to believe in their own connections. The man who felt instant recognition with his wife on their first date, and everyone told him it was just chemistry. The woman who visited Japan for the first time and wept because she felt like she had returned home. The 4-year-old boy who spoke of his other family in a country he had never visited. The couple who met at an airport and felt like they had been searching for each other for lifetimes. All of them commented on Richard and Emily's videos, in the articles, on social media. I felt this too. I also dreamt of someone before I met them. I also have a birthmark that has no medical explanation. And Richard and Emily's message was always the same. You're not crazy. Your soul remembers, and that is enough. Some stories don't need to be believed by everyone. They just need to be validated for one. 3 years after their marriage, Emily was pregnant. Richard cried when he found out, not from sadness, from gratitude, because in 1225, Alaric had died before he could have children with Isabella. Now, 803 years later, they were going to have a family. Sophia was thrilled. She was going to be a big sister. A baby girl was born. In August, the same month that Alaric had died, they named her Isabella, after the Queen, after the promise, after the love that spanned 800 years. And when Richard held his daughter for the first time, he felt something he didn't expect. Peace, as if a cosmic debt had been paid, as if the universe said, "You did it, you fulfilled your promise. Now, live." Dr. Abernathy published a second article 5 years after the first. Title: Connected Souls, analysis of 89 documented cases of transgenerational recognition. This time it was accepted by Nature Human Behavior, one of the world's most prestigious scientific journals. The article included statistical analysis of birthmarks correlated with documented historical wounds, cases of genetically inexplicable abilities, phenomena of instant recognition with historical validation. Proposed theoretical framework for non-local memory of consciousness. The scientific community exploded, half called it pseudoscience, half called it revolutionary. But no one could deny the data. 89 cases, documented, with historical evidence, photos, documents, chronicles. 3 universities opened formal research lines on transgenerational consciousness. And Richard and Emily, who only wanted answers for their own connection, became the most documented case study of soul recognition in history. But for them, none of that mattered. What mattered was this: waking up together, having breakfast with Sophia and Isabella, walking through the garden of 800 roses, playing the harp while Richard listened, sitting under the stars on August 15th at 11:47 p.m. and remembering, not with sadness, but with gratitude, because the pain of 1225 had given way to the happiness of 2025. 10 years after they met, Richard and Emily were invited to give a talk at the University of Madrid, auditorium with 800 people, students, professors, skeptics, believers. Emily spoke first. She told their story, from the first touch, the visions, the fear, the denial, and finally, the acceptance. Richard spoke after. He showed photos of the portrait from 1225, the chronicles, Isabella's letter, the birthmarks, the ring. But the most powerful part was when Sophia, now 14, took the stage. She spoke in a clear voice, mature, and said something no one expected. "I remember too." The auditorium fell silent. Sophia continued, "I remember the palace, the rose garden, my mother Isabella taking care of me. I was 6 years old when Alaric died. I was there. I saw everything. And when Isabella died 3 years later, I was 9. I was orphaned. I was sent to a convent. I died at 12. Of fever. Alone." Tears streamed down her face, but she smiled. "And now I'm here, with them again. But this time not as an orphan, but as a daughter. And this time no one is going to die. This time we are going to live." The auditorium exploded in applause. Some cried, others were in shock, but everyone felt something. Hope. Hope that death is not the end, that true connections transcend time, that promises made with the heart can be fulfilled even after 800 years. At the end of the talk, a 60-year-old woman raised her hand. "I met someone 40 years ago," she said in a trembling voice. "I felt like I had known him forever. But society said it was too fast, that it wasn't real. So I let him go, and I regret it every day." Emily stepped down from the stage, walked towards her, and said something that was captured on video. "It's never too late. If he was your soulmate, your soul still recognizes him. Look for him. And if he's not in this life, your soul will find him in the next. Because some promises have no expiration date," the woman cried. And 3 months later, she sent an email to the foundation. "I found him. He had married, widowed 2 years ago. I wrote to him. He remembered me. We met, and it was as if 40 years disappeared. We are getting married in December." Those are the stories that change the world, not the big ones, but the small ones. One person at a time, one connection at a time. And it all started with an accidental touch between a clerk and a millionaire on a Tuesday morning at precisely 7 a.m. when Emily Carter served coffee to Richard Sterling. 800 years of history erupted in a single second. Now let me ask you something, you listening to this. Have you ever felt like you know someone you just met? Have you looked into someone's eyes and felt like you've waited your entire life for that moment? Have you visited a place and felt like you had been there before? If the answer is yes, Leave me a comment. Tell your story. Because somewhere out there, someone else is feeling the exact same thing. And your comment might be the validation they need to believe in their own connection. And if you've made it this far, if you've listened to this entire story without pausing, it's because something in your soul recognizes the truth. That true love doesn't end with death. That some promises transcend lifetimes. That soulmates are real. And that when two souls are destined to be together, the entire universe conspires to bring them together. No matter how long it takes, 100 years, 500, 800, connected souls always recognize each other. They always find each other. They always fulfill their promises. Richard and Emily proved it, and now they're living the life that Alaric and Isabella dreamed of 800 years ago, together, in peace, in love, forever. Because some stories don't end. They only transform from tragedy into triumph, from death into life, from promise into reality. And that's the most beautiful story of all.